That's a battle that I think almost every entrepreneur is going to deal with because
Yeah.
the reason why you got into this in the first place is to do something different, to get ahead, like to push yourself to live a different life. And that doesn't go away. I don't know. I don't know a single person that has become successful or wealthy that was just like, oh, I'm good. I'm done. I'm just going to go chill now. Like that doesn't happen, right?
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 106 of the Wealth Podcast. Today, we have the great pleasure of chatting with Ryan Corcoran. Ryan is a phenomenal local investor and entrepreneur. He is the founder and CEO of Specialized Property Group. He has been a guest on multiple podcasts, including the Tribe of Millionaires podcast, and we are super hyped to chat with him today. Ryan, what is going on, man?
What's going on, Kyle? How are you? Very, very nice intro. I appreciate the kind words.
Thank you, man. But yeah, man, super excited to have you today. Let's jump right in. Tell us about, kind of like your entry into real estate and how everything kind of started.
Yeah. All right. So I started buying real estate when I was 21 years old. I was in college studying to be a physical therapist, actually, and then I ended up taking a job working in an emergency department, and then realized that physical therapy wasn't the route for me, and I actually ended up going to PA school. I got my master's as a physician assistant, worked in an ICU for about 2 years. And, throughout that whole process, I had been buying, a duplex, a triplex, just, smaller deals, but I was getting hooked on them. Right. And then as soon as I graduated PA school, I ended up selling that duplex, and I walked away with a check the size of my PA salary. And I was like, okay, I just spent $120,000 to go to PA school to make probably, $120,000 when I leave. And I just bought this property 2 years ago. It did literally nothing for the last 2 years, except, manage it, talk to tenants, and just, owning property. Right. And I made the same amount of money. And so after I was working as a PA, I started really to build up that portfolio. I bought a 6-unit, a 5-unit, a 10-unit, and I just kept rolling with it. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't do both anymore. It's really not fair to the patients that I'm taking care of, because I'd be walking into patients' rooms, my phone would be ringing from leads that are coming in, and all I'd be thinking about is the next deal. So ultimately, it wasn't fair for me to keep being a PA and practicing medicine. So I stepped into real estate full time. So now we've got a couple hundred units, a little over 250 units. We've got a flipping company, a wholesaling company, and we're doing some development now. So we're moving along.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. Holy crap. And something, Ryan, it's funny you say that about like getting into the profession and then, kind of discovering real estate as, kind of a different avenue that you can take. I've heard that like a couple times, like people going to like through med school and stuff like that and being like, all right, like this is perfect. Like, like a very, honorable career field and everything, 100%. And then discovering real estate, and all of a sudden there's something else there that you can pivot. And it's like, might do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
After kind of seeing some of those numbers and stuff. That's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. That first property I bought, I had like $5,000 to my name. And so the reason I actually wanted to do it in the first place is because I started to realize, I looked ahead. I'm like, okay, in high school, I didn't do anything. I was just an athlete, didn't study at all, barely, like I was getting B's, whatever. Went to college, did really well. And I'm like, okay, when I'm done college, like, what is my life going to look like? And so I started doing some math, like, okay, I've got this much student debt. I'm going to have a car payment, a house. Like, how in the hell can I live on $120,000? Right. And I'm not saying it's not a lot of money at the age of 25, 26. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of money. But when you have a lot of expenses and student debt, it really, you don't have much left over. And so that's why I really started to look into other avenues to create other ways to bring in income. And then once I realized that, there's a lot bigger world out there than what we're all taught through the education system. I just ran with it. So
I don't blame you, man. You're totally right, though. Especially in today's day and age, just with like how expensive everything is. And like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like just trying to, trying to create, I guess, kind of like that comfortable, kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely doesn't have as much power as it did like 10, 20 years ago. you know?
Exactly.
Definitely, man. So I guess kind of how was it, jumping into like that first property, like stabilizing it? Like, what did that kind of situation look like? Was it an on and off market deal? Like, were you doing a lot of the work yourself?
All right. Yeah. Good question. This is the only deal I've ever done this way, and it'll probably be the only deal I ever will do this way. It was on market. I made an offer. It got rejected. It went under agreement with somebody else. It fell through. I then made another offer. We negotiated a little bit, and we got it under agreement, and I ended up buying it. I had no money. Like I said before, I had $5,000. So I called my uncle, who I knew had a construction company, and I said, I need you to hold this note for me. And he was like, it didn't really come off like that. Actually, I had spent the last 6 months with him learning about real estate because he had been in it for a while. Construction. He had a couple rental properties. He'd flipped some houses. So he was my first mentor. And so he actually lent me the capital to buy that first property. Then my parents lent me $10,000 to do some rehab in the unit, replace a furnace. And then I spent every dime I had. I had like $20 in my bank account. If something went wrong, I essentially was going to go swimming and drown. But at 22 years old, who cares, right? Like the reason I did this all in the first place was like, who cares? Like if I fall flat on my face, well, I've got nothing anyways. What does it really matter, right? I have my whole life to build it back up. Fortunately, it worked out well, and my dad was helping me a lot. I had friends come over. I bought a case of beer and some pizza. We did the landscaping. Like it was really a team effort. I just happened to be the leader of it, and kind of just like was paying people here. Dude, one time I cleaned out the basement and I put everything in the front yard, and I had this guy on a bike come by with like a basket attached to the back, and he was like, dude, can I take all this paint from you and I'll trade it in for like $20 at like Abishan down the road? I'm like, dude, take every single can. I want nothing to do with this. But it was very everything was very unprofessional, and I was doing everything by myself, very hands-on. But I learned a lot, right? And I learned that I'll never do that again. But I also learned how to do everything. So then the next property, I could take that and teach people and sort of guide, property managers, contractors, how to be creative with financing, how to structure a deal together when you don't have money. So that's really how the first one went. And then I was able to stabilize it, get some renters in there. The rental income actually paid me to eat some food, go out and get some beers while I was in college, like just little things like that I was like, okay, like this can actually can actually generate some income here and there. And then I ended up selling it, and I watched it appreciate by $120,000, and I was like, oh my god, like this is amazing, like this is fantastic. Why can't I do 100 of these a year? So yeah, that was the first one.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, man. The education, you know what I mean? I definitely feel you on the, kind of like as soon as you're like getting started and everything, like doing a lot of the work yourself, like, asking your buddies to come over and, like help you paint or do the landscaping or what have you. That was definitely kind of what my last year looked like, and kind of understood value of time, while still juggling like a full-time job and stuff like that. And I mean, I think there is like a ridiculous amount of value though in like learning that stuff for the first time, like doing it yourself or trying to do it yourself.
100%.
Depends on what it is. But and just kind of learning it to your point, be able to delegate that and know what that result is supposed to look like. And like, just kind of, take like a different kind of role in that kind of project.
Yeah. At that time, so I'm really big on, what is the best use of your time? And so as you start to make more money, if you have a full-time job or whatever else you're doing, the best use of your time is always evolving. For me at that time, I quite literally didn't have a job. I was a full-time student. The best use of my time was to get my hands dirty and figure out how to do everything because I couldn't pay somebody to do it, right? I didn't have the money to do that. Now, if you asked me to go change plumbing under a sink, I would tell you you're insane and I will not do that because it doesn't make, number one, financial sense. Number two, I drive to the thing, I drive to Home Depot, I drive back. Like by the time I'm done, it's 3-4 hours. I'm pissed off. I want nothing to do with this anymore. Well, I could have just, paid somebody $150 an hour to do that, right? It's a different time. And so I think, a lot of people who are starting off in real estate, they do one of two things. Number one, they say, I don't want to do anything. I want to hire everything. Well, I don't necessarily know that's the way to go, because if you don't have the capital to do that, you're going to drown pretty quickly. Number two, you need to learn how to do things in order to grow a business. And if you can at least get the baseline knowledge of how to run a rental property and how to be a landlord and just basic common sense stuff, it goes a long way. So
100%, man, definitely. It's funny. I really relate to you on the replacing the plumbing under a sink because that was definitely something that I struggled with personally a little bit in one of my units. And I was like, this literally doesn't make sense. I'm like, I have half inch. I'm like, but half inch is this, but a half inch drain is a different kind of size, like tubular. I'm like, what the hell does tubular mean? And like, and that's coming from like doing HVAC every day. You know what I mean? I'm on right now.
Yeah.
And the amount of times back to Lowe's, back and forth, and trying to get the kits and everything, and it eats your day away, man.
Yeah.
And exactly to your point, like, I was pissed the whole time. I'm like, screw this. I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah. I relate it to, it's like, okay, you ever change your own oil in your car? Like, okay, you jack the car up, you get underneath there, you're dirty, you've got a wrench in your hand, you're trying to undo the bolt, and then all of a sudden the wrench slips off the bolt, your hand hits the friggin' exhaust pipe, you got a bruise on your friggin' hand, the oil's spilling all over the place, you got a friggin' mess. And then you realize, like, oh my God, I forgot to put the little gasket thing on before, and then you got to take the whole thing off again. It's just like, it's the same concept, right? Like when you have no money, sure, you got to do that. You got to learn it. But eventually, as you start to grow, learning how to offset and delegate that is huge, because you cannot be bogged down doing things like that if you're trying to grow a business. So fun stories, though.
100%, man. Oh, of course, right? Yeah, one of the things that I'm trying to learn this year, because I was previously house hacking and then I moved back into my parents' house, and like that's where I am now, is getting that third unit rented and trying to stay the heck out of Leominster and like just stay away from that property and just try and like learn that different kind of role of managing that property from afar and like just relying completely on the team and having the go-tos and be like, all right, guys, like, unit 1 texted me that their drain isn't, their drain's clogged or something. And just getting the plumber or whoever it is to, go over when he gets a second, talk it and call it done, without actually stepping on site. So I'm kind of excited to kind of learn that kind of aspect,
Yeah. And you still work you're working a full-time job. So you're fortunate that you can leave a unit vacant for a little while. And I think this brings me to my next point that, a lot of people say they just want to quit their, buy a bunch of rentals and quit your job. I've done it and I don't recommend it. And so I think, you are very intelligent for hanging on to that W-2 job and working it while you're trying to build a portfolio. Because let me tell you, it's stressful as hell when you don't have a steady income coming in and you don't have enough from elsewhere to keep you afloat. So props to you on that one. Because I barely had any income coming in really when I quit. So
I hear you there, man. I do appreciate it. And it is tough because without getting into too much detail, my day job is not sunshines and rainbows by any means. So like I've had a lot of like thoughts going through my head, a lot of different conversations with, like people just like yourself of like, all right, like I know the thing that I'm passionate about. And like, I just have the one property. I'm like, very, very early into the process, but here's my situation with my W-2 and like, how can I, but yeah, the opinion that I definitely was getting a lot was to just hold on to that job, just like pile as much money as you can, and then kind of reevaluate like at the end of the year and kind of see like what you got going on, get things kind of up and running, and then, kind of take your next step after that. So
it sounds like a good plan. I think I lost you.
Oh, there we go. You just kind of cropped out on me there.
Yeah, lost you for a little bit. All right, I'm back.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I apologize. But yeah, so one of the questions that I do want to ask you, man, what's your vision for the long term?
That is a difficult question. it's always changing, right? Initially, starting out, it was, man, if I could have like 30 units, like I'm good. Like I can continue, I can work my job. I have a passive income coming in. I can buy the car I want, travel where I want, live in a house I want. And then you get closer to that goal that you thought you wanted. And then it evolves into something more, right? And then it became, oh my God, like if I get 100 units, or if I could make $100,000 a year in rental income. And then you get closer to that. And it's always evolving. And so for me, really, I think the next evolving phase in my journey here is I want to build multiple businesses or buy multiple businesses instead of just really me being a solopreneur, right? I mean, I've got a team, but like, whether it's a roofing business, a contracting business, restaurants, right? Other avenues where I can shoot up other verticals and continue to grow from a business standpoint, because I believe you can only really go so far in one thing, and you can keep pressing it. And once you've built that bridge and you've maximized it, maybe it's time to look into a different avenue for a little bit. And so I think the next thing for me is I'm probably going to start some sort of service business alongside real estate. So probably contracting, roofing, cleaning, something along those lines, and continue to build up the development, the rehabs, and the wholesaling and buy and hold that I've got right now in the investing space. So yeah, vision long term, it's probably going to be 10, 20 businesses that are all linked together, working together in unison. I think that right now is the vision. So we'll see.
I love that, man. Especially like the vertical integration piece, like having like the roofing businesses and stuff like that strongly complement like the real estate side. And
exactly.
That always blows my mind, man. I listened to Axel Ragnarsson's podcast religiously. And when he was talking about, he's probably talked about it a couple times, but like the science behind like the vertical integration of like, having those other businesses that allow you to be able to like, potentially pay a little bit more for a property or what have you, because you already know like what those costs are going to be. And like it's just like you have that kind of like other variable to be able to help you in a different context. And like, I think about it all the time, man. Like I love that idea, especially like kind of going in another direction of like having those different kinds of businesses, like just in other areas, to like diversify and like try different things. And I think it's the coolest thing in the world, man. And like, especially, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree. I think I think a lot of investors and business owners get to that point too early though. I think you have to focus so much on that one thing that you're doing before you start shooting up a bunch of other ones, because if you haven't built that and basically autopilot it, when you start to go focus on something else, that other business is going to start coming down. And so then you've got two mediocre things going. It can still work, but it's not, you're going to be stressed out. You're probably not going to be happy because you're going to be like, what the hell am I doing here? I'm jumping back and forth. So I focus on one thing, go hard on that one thing for 2-3 years. Once you've done it once, you can go into another business and do that in half the time. So that's my advice on that. Learning the hard way.
That's huge, man. I like that a lot. And I like the a while back you mentioned like building that bridge, and I really like it was Brandon Turner that says the phrase often of like, building like that first bridge to the island, and then you can use the resources to bring them back and build the second one. And but if you're trying to build way too many bridges at the same time, like you're only halfway across the water, and like you still have nothing.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. It's very true.
I love that, man. That's super cool. So going kind of from, that first experience with the 2-family and kind of jumping into like the next thing, like especially like jumping into like the small commercial space, like take us a little bit kind of through that transition of, like absolutely nailing like that first property to starting to like go a little bit bigger. And
so I was house hacking a 3-family in Fitchburg, and I had met. So I'm really big on direct mail marketing and off-market lead sourcing, and so I ended up connecting with a guy who I actually bought over 100 units with over the last couple of years through direct mail, and he did nothing but 5 units and larger. And so, to be honest with you, I don't know if I ever would have got into that space if I hadn't met that person through doing marketing, through having, the balls to spend $3,000 a month when I didn't have it on marketing to try to find deals. And I ended up meeting him, and we actually partnered together on a 10-unit property. And he ran the whole thing. Like I didn't do anything. The only thing I did was I raised the capital for it. And so, you have to bring some sort of skill to an endeavor, right? Like you can't meet somebody and be like, oh, let's partner up on something if you're not bringing some extreme value. For him at that time, he was trying to grow his portfolio, didn't have the capital in the bank to continue to purchase this property, but he had a property management company. He had the ability to take the deal down. He knew exactly what he was doing. Analysis and financially, he's a genius. I, on the other hand, I am not a numbers person. And so we molded really well together on that first deal. And then from there, it was like, okay, there's going to be nothing but 6-unit buildings or larger, like absolutely nothing. Like I'm not doing any of this other, but I'm not buying and holding a 3-unit ever again, or 4-unit, a 5-unit. And so we just kept getting bigger and bigger. And yeah, that's really how I got the taste of that, because you start to realize that the more units you have under one roof, the numbers start to look better because you don't pay as much per unit, but the rent doesn't really change. So, if you're paying $1,500 for a 2-bed in a 3-unit, you're probably paying $1,500 or maybe $1,475, whatever it is, in a 10-unit property for that same unit. But the unit price, you're not paying $150,000 a unit like you are in a 3-unit. You're paying maybe 90 or 100. And then if you have it off market, you're buying it even less than that. And so the split in the profit margin is way larger. Not to mention that the value comes from really just how good can you manipulate these numbers, right? How much income can you produce, and how well can you drive your expenses downward? And then it's just an equation from there. You have a cap rate for the town that you're buying it in, and then you just you take the NOI, figure out the value from there, and you can it's like rocket fuel. So
I love that, man. No, I totally understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean? And like, I think that space is like ridiculously cool. Especially
also, sorry, I mean,
that's okay. That's okay.
Financing in commercial space, people think it's so complex. Like, dude, getting a loan for a 2-family or a 3-family is so much more difficult than getting a loan for a 6-unit property. Like, so much more difficult. They don't even, like, commercial lenders, it's like, all right, is the deal going to make money? And are you financially able, or is your partner, or can you bring money from somewhere just to show that you can, like, if something goes wrong, you can maintain it? Like, that's it. In residential, it's like, okay, how much money do you make? Let me see your tax returns for the last 3 freaking years. We need I need an inspection, appraisal. The 20% down here, maybe 25% down. Are you going to live in the property? It's
your firstborn child. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a whole mess. So it's just not built for the investor, right? The 2s and 3s, they're actually meant for you to live in. 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, those are actually meant to make money. And so the lending is just much different in favor for the investor.
Yeah. To be honest, man, like it really blew my mind. Like the first time I have a ton to learn about that kind of space, man. But like from the little bit of knowledge that, I have kind of come across on it, it did really blow my mind when, like it started to kind of learn that like it was based a lot more on the property and a lot more of like the business aspect, and that like that space is a lot more negotiable than just like the residential. Like, oh, like if your debt to income's below like 44 or like whatever it is, like it's just not happening. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Period. But
yeah,
like,
and even larger, so for example, your 3-family, the value of that property is going to be dictated on what the other 3 families in your area are selling for. Now, your rent might be a little higher, maybe a little bit less than those other people, but largely the value of that property is going to be a comparable sale. For me, if I buy a 6-unit and the next 6-unit next door sold for 400, but my 6-unit could sell for 800, right? Because I have driven the rents up, I've dropped expenses, and so there's not so much of a comparable game anymore. And so really it comes down to how skillful can you be, how creative can you be, and how well can you optimize and stable an asset. And that it's just not the same game with smaller multifamily.
Definitely, man. It's super cool.
Yeah.
So Ryan, a question that I do like to ask everybody is, how do you define wealth?
All right. Again, I think this is also an evolving question if you're not catching on here. Because, initially for me, I'll just take you through my phases, right? Initially, it was I have no money. How the hell am I going to, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Right. And then all of a sudden, you sell a property, you've got money in the bank that you've never seen before. You've got a job that you're making 6 figures in a job. And I'm like, all right, I'm doing well. Like at that point, I felt well. Right. But then you get in the room with people who are making what you make in a year and a month. And then it's like, okay, am I really wealthy from a money standpoint? No, probably no, not at all, right? But am I wealthy in my life in other areas? 100%. And so I think you really have to, for me, it was evaluating life happiness and then money and trying to merge the two together to figure out what wealth is to me. I'm a very competitive human being, and I'm hardly ever satisfied. Like, I don't want to say I'm not like happy. I'm very happy, but I'm never satisfied with where I'm at. So I'm always trying to push the limits. I'm always trying to get that next deal larger, whether it's money or size or even freedom, right? This year, I think we're traveling. My wife and I are traveling almost every single month somewhere. I've never done that before, like every single month. And so to me, like, I feel wealthy that I'm able to do that now. Will that change in a year? Yeah, who knows, right? So it's a tough question. It's a good question though. It makes you think, because there's no number that you can pin on it that says, this is what makes you wealthy. So yeah,
definitely, man. And that's one of the reasons that I do really enjoy asking that question. Is it like it almost like knocks you back because like it's just one of those like you're right. Like it's not what a lot of people like outside of like the entrepreneurship type of sphere expect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like there's so many different ways to go and like all different areas of your life and everything. And like I really enjoy it. And like I don't know, I almost like chuckle a little bit like when I ask and people are like, oh crap, like you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I'm totally with you, man. And I think that's the coolest thing in the world. And that's I definitely feel you when it comes to like I know what you're talking about with like the satisfaction. You know what I mean? And like, I think it's a really interesting balance between like, like making progression and stuff like that and like being happy with where you are, but also like just wanting like the next thing too. You know what I mean? And like, I'm still trying to figure that out for myself because it's kind of difficult,
I think that's that's a battle that I think almost every entrepreneur is going to deal with because the reason why you got into this in the first place is to do something different, to get ahead, like to push yourself to, to live a different life. And that doesn't go away. Or I don't know a single person that has become successful or wealthy that was just like, oh, I'm good, I'm done. I'm just going to go chill now. Like that doesn't happen. Right. And like, there isn't an enough standpoint. It's always, what can I do next? What can I do next? What can I do next? So yeah, it's always, and I think it should be that way, right? That's how you that's how you become better at what you're doing. So it should be evolving at all times, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. Always, kind of pushing the envelope and getting to the next thing and the next thing. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's extremely cool, man. You know what I mean? And like, I know we were talking a little bit before the show, about like social media and stuff like that. It's really cool seeing like, a lot of the different like projects and stuff like that you guys are working on. And like I was watching like a couple of your stories yesterday of like, the bathroom and like some of the projects and like everything, like getting like ripped apart and stuff like that. Really cool stuff, man. Absolutely awesome.
It's a lot of fun. It's I feel like I'm ripping my hair out of my head a lot of times, but that's why probably I don't have much on here. But no, it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So let's put it that way. As you can tell, I have a lot of energy towards this because I really enjoy it. So, I mean, I talk about this for hours. So,
yeah, no, I totally agree with you, man. And yeah. So one question that I do have for you too, man, is do you read, and what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone? It could be like a podcast or like anything you consume, like at all. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay. I read, before I bought any property, I read 25 books in a 6-month period. Like I would just cranked through books because I didn't know anything. And I used to be a huge reader, not so much anymore because when I read for a purpose. Like I read because I'm trying to learn something. I typically don't just read just to read. I'd rather consume content other ways. And so, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. And so part of that is I try, whether it's reading 20 minutes or recently it's been hop on YouTube and learn something about what I have coming up today. So for example, if I've got somebody who, I've got a roofing job going on or something, I'm going to spend a half an hour that morning, like watching YouTube videos on like roofing and how to grow a roofing business, like just stuff like that. Just like learning things through content, and whether that's a book or video or podcast or whatever it may be. I don't necessarily think you have to be a reader. I think if you're training your brain and you're learning more information, whatever way that is easiest for you, then by all means go for it. But yeah, my favorite, my favorite book, I think comes from before I even bought something. It was Brandon Turner's book. I'm sure people have mentioned it before, the rental book, because he really talks about all the different ways you can do things that, there's a saying like, you don't know what you know until you actually know it. And that book for me was like, what in the world? Like, how can you do this? Like, how is this possible? Right. And he starts talking about it. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't even know this existed. I've read a ton of books since then, and a lot of them have been really helpful, but that one really, it was one of the first ones I read. So it stuck with me.
Definitely, man. I really feel you there. And I really like that tip, man, of like, if you have like a situation that, you have going on maybe for the first time or like the first couple times, doing a little bit of studying on that, like before you go into that situation, to at least have like, somewhat of a baseline, kind of understanding and a little bit more and, kind of a short amount of time to be able to go into that situation and kind of, have a little bit of a bigger idea of what's going on. That's awesome, man. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Damn. Yeah. I love it, man. That's sweet. So Ryan, where on like social media and stuff can you be found, man? I know you have an awesome podcast.
I haven't been super religious with the podcast, to be honest with you. I think I have like 15 episodes or something like that. But you know what? It's fun because I'll do maybe one or two a month. And it's great because it's like this, right? I learn about you, you learn about me. I just, we're just talking about real estate, right? So I have a podcast. It's called the Leveraging Real Estate Podcast. It will improve over time, but I'm on Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel, just my name, and then TikTok at RJ Corcoran 08. Same with Instagram, RJ Corcoran 08. Like I told you before, and I've told other people, I have a terrible relationship with social media. I'm not good at creating videos or content, and so I try my best, but I think it's improving slowly. I've been getting some tips from people. And advice and some comments that it's been getting better over the last year. So that's a positive for me. That's a win on my book.
To be honest with you, Ryan, like I said, man, literally, like, I think your social media is kick ass, to be honest with you. Literally, like the videos, like, I don't know. I thought it was great, man. Like it surprises me that you say that. Cause like, like you see the stories and like the projects and stuff going on and, like clips from like other interviews and stuff that you've done. Like I see it all the time in my feed, man. You know what I mean? So...
I appreciate it, man. The whole purpose of social media, number one, is to build a brand, right? So people know who you are. But number two, I love teaching people how to do things, right? If I know how to do something, I want everyone to know how to do that because it works. And so the purpose for me really is just when I put everything out here is like, okay, guys, this is how you do it. Go do it yourself. Like you can do the exact same thing I just did. All you have to do is this. And so that's the purpose of me creating that, the videos and stuff. So.
I feel you, man. I absolutely love that as well. Like just, like if you're learning things like in the field, whether it's, things that are going well, things that maybe aren't, or I should say are a little bit more of a challenge, like just kind of like sharing that stuff and just pushing out the knowledge into the world. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of fun too. And like, I was talking to somebody at an event last night. And like, I want to get a lot better at like posting like when things aren't going so well, like when it comes to the property and like, or, whatever is kind of going on or whatever. And I did it in the past. And like, I had a really eye-opening experience because I had an exhaust fan in my bathroom and there was some things on the exhaust fan that I can't say as an agent, but I know it was that. And I was trying to figure out like what the heck was going on, because like my bathroom's literally like the size of a small closet, man, like wicked small, right? And I'm like, all right, like this exhaust fan like should be, like this place should be spotless, like with none of that type of stuff at all. And I had a handyman by, and I was like, oh, like I want to replace this, like I guess it's not working or something. And like it turned on fine and everything. And he's like, oh, like, it might it might just have to be cleaned. I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So I started, kind of taking it apart, like piece by piece. And I grabbed the hose, or I pushed it into the ceiling, and I grabbed the hose and I pulled on it, hoping that it stopped me, like it was connected to something.
Yeah.
And I pulled the entire hose down because it just dumped in a ceiling that was above, or I should say like a crawl space, like above the ceiling kind of thing. And I literally like had it sitting in the bathroom, and there was like crap all over the place. And I posted a Facebook video of it, and literally like, like just saying like, oh, like I just posted just for like shits and giggles, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, like this is what I'm dealing with today. And it was on the floor and just sitting there and all gross and everything. And I kind of thought it was funny because it makes a lot of sense why the situation that I was in, you know what I mean?
No, I think I remember you posting that, and I remember thinking to myself, like, I like how he's posting something that is not something that like you typically see an investor post, right? Like usually it's like, oh, I made this much money, or look at this beautiful place. Instead, it's like, what the hell did I buy? This isn't even a bed. Like this, you know what I mean? Like it's good to see that stuff though, because that's really what this is all about. Every single day I run into things that I'm like, I'm scratching my head, like, why? What is that? Why did this happen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it opened up my eyes, man, because like there were a lot of people that went to the comments and were like, oh crap, like that same exact situation happened to me, or like something really similar like 2 weeks ago. Like, and I feel like it's just like the insight into some of the conversations that happen to all of us in one way or another that aren't glamorized, because it's not like, oh, this is like, I made like a huge return on this, or like I did this like crazy unit turn, like everything's like really kick ass. But like, I don't know, man, like it just opened up my eyes. Like we're all dealing with this. Like I feel like it's just a matter of like having those kind of conversations. And it's like, oh, like I'm getting kicked around, and like that's totally fine. Like I'm learning a lot from this, like fantastic,
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like things aren't going so well, and like people were able to kind of join in and be like, oh, like I had something really similar happen, and like this is how I got through it. Like it's part of the game, man. And like it's just
I
one
think
of those...
you want to compile as many wins as possible, but while you're doing that, you're inevitably going to run into those things. Yeah, I remember telling one of the first podcasts. Actually, I think it was on Axel's podcast. I lost $40,000 flipping a single family home. I fortunately I was able to absorb it, but like $40,000 is a good amount of money to lose on a flip. And so for me, it was like, all right, what did I learn from this, and how can I move forward from it? Right. And then another situation, we were supposed to pull $200,000 out of a cash out refinance. The bank backed out on us right before they were going to give our bank commitment. Rates were at 4.5 when we locked it in, and then they were at 6.5. All of a sudden, instead of pulling out $200,000, we have to bring $75,000 to the table to refinance the property that we had already stabilized. And so that's $250,000 loss, essentially. More, actually, more than $250,000 loss. And so things happen, right? But I think the name of the game as an investor and a business owner is it doesn't matter, right? Like you need to figure out, because there's always a way around things, right? Whether you're losing money, whether that happens, there's always a way to navigate it, to put yourself in the best position to move forward. And so, I'm all about, I love how you say, I wish, I want to post things that don't go well, because that is, people need to know that before they jump into things like this, right? And if you want to be an educator and an influencer, and somebody who's talking about what they're doing all day, and all you're doing is posting sunshine and rainbows, you're kind of being a little fake, right? Because we all know the other people who are investing, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. Exactly.
I appreciate it, man. And it's just part of the game. Like I've told one of my buddies that I'm super close with, completely outside of like the real estate sphere, but like I told him, because we were actually having a conversation a couple nights ago, and he was telling me, he was asking if he could kind of pick my brain about like, maybe buying a single family in New Hampshire at some point or something. And I was just giving him some tips. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, make sure like your reserves are strong. I'm like, I don't care that like it's a little bit smaller than, like 2 family, 3 family, whatever. Like, but I'm like, you never know when that boiler is going to kick out, because that happened to me. You know what I mean? And like, it just like, you have to be able to weather the storm. And it's just like, it's some of that stuff that, everybody always talks about, like, oh, like you never want to be like house poor and yada, yada, yada. But I told him, I'm like, dude, I'm like, like I've been through this, like at least, in one way or another, a couple times last year. And like, you never know when this kind of stuff's going to happen. I'm like, and you just have to be ready for it. And it doesn't matter what kind of property it is, man. I'm like, just don't over leverage.
I agree. I also think on the flip side of that, because I totally agree with you, is that I don't think if you haven't started yet that you should stop because of these things, right? That we $250,000 here, oh my god, $8,000 boiler here, I lost $40,000 here, right? Like that shouldn't stop you to get in. The real reason we bring this stuff up is because when you're first starting, the likelihood that the boiler is going to go 2 days after you buy it, very slim, but it can happen, right? And and even if it does happen and you don't have the money to pay for it, you'll figure it out, right? Like you will figure it out. You can finance it. The state will put it in for 50% off if you call Mass Save, right? Like, or New Hampshire Save, right? There's ways that you learn and you figure things out along the way. And so it's not the end. It's not like be all end all if something happens, right? Like get your feet in there, to jump in there, and you'll figure it out on the way.
Exactly, man. You're 100% right. And it's just, it's part of the game, and it's not talked about as much, but I love having those kind of conversations, man, and like, yeah, exactly. Like the Mass Save thing, like that. I wanted to use that for a different purpose when I first bought the house, to convert from oil to gas. And like, everything was going well. And I had kind of a couple challenges like right after purchase. And I ended up using the Mass Save loan to do that boiler right off the bat. And like, I tell people all about it. I'm like, that kind of sucked in the moment. But to know that you have essentially almost like a get out of jail free card to space that thing the heck out. And like now it's like, $47 a week, and I get to maintain the liquidity to use in a different place.
And not only that, dude, but like that furnace alone probably increased the value of that property by 4x what the price of it was, right? And so like people don't think about that, but that really is why real estate is awesome, because things can get thrown at you. You figure out how to fix it. And 9 times out of 10, if you're improving the property, you're improving the value of it over the long term. And so, it's a no-brainer. $47 a month for $8,000 furnace that probably increased the property value by $30,000. Like, who would do that, right?
It's nuts.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's a completely different frame of mind, you know what I mean? And just like thinking bigger picture. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.